Okay, good day everyone. So in this video, what I want to do is I want to kind of discuss and go through how you actually install R on your computer. Now, the R programming language will install pretty straightforwardly on both Windows and Macintosh operating systems, as well as Linux, by the way. But I should warn you, if you're using something like a Chromebook or a tablet, you're going to be SOL. So you do need to be using kind of a proper, fleshed out operating system for this. Now, prior to attempting any install, it's maybe going to be a bit useful to make a simple distinction first. R is a programming language, which means it's nothing more than a language that you can use to communicate instructions to your computer. And to communicate those instructions, some type of interface is required. This is if you think about it, this is just a basic reality that applies to any language. It's it's quite difficult to communicate with someone if they have no mouth, eyes, or ears to kind of send and receive communications with. And computers are no different in this respect. Simply understanding the language is not sufficient. So for this reason, most operating systems actually come equipped with their own basic way of interfacing with the user via something called a command console. And all this is it's just an application, a very simple, basic application that allows you to type instructions, that is to say, commands, to your computer. So if you're using like Windows, for instance, that application is called the command prompt. So I can actually kind of show you that here. Command prompt. You can see it's very simple. You've probably seen it before, but maybe you just never really knew what it was for or what it was called. So that's Windows. But if you're using a Mac, this application is actually called the terminal application, and it will look very similar to this. Now, relying on kind of a basic command console like this as your primary means of interface is, if I'm being honest, a pretty cumbersome and inefficient experience, though there are people who do it, but it's not a recommended course of action, particularly for beginners. Um, the preferred means of communicating R to your computer is via the use of what in programming lingo is called an environment. Or if you want to sound really important, you could say integrated development environment, or IDE for short. And all this is it's just a software application that provides the user with kind of a more elegant visual workspace and kind of a bigger set of features just to make the whole act of programming kind of a smoother, more pleasant experience. And the standard installation of R will actually come with its own associated environment for the user, provided you're uh, working with either a Windows or Macintosh operating system. I think if you install it on Linux, it's been a while since I've done this, but I think if you install it on Linux, it doesn't come with the environment, so you have to install your own if you want to use that. Now, while the kind of default R environment is preferable to kind of the basic command console environment that your operating system has, most R users still tend to find it lacking, and they usually install a different environment called RStudio, which is also open source and free for non-commercial use. Now, if you head over to the R project website, which is what you can see depicted on the screen here, so that's just simply www.r-project.org, and I'll put that link in the video description. If you head over to this website, you should see in the upper left corner a link here called CRAN. And what CRAN stands for is Comprehensive R Archive Network. And all this is a set of servers around the world that distribute R alongside packages that are associated with R. And these servers are mirrored, meaning they're all going to provide the same content. So there's no need to worry about one server providing kind of incomplete, out of date, or unofficial versions of R. In most cases, the server that's closest to your own home location is probably the one you should download from. So if we click this, you can see it just gives us a host of options here. Um, However, it's maybe just worth pointing out that the install file for R is only about 80 megabytes large. So unless you live in like the remotest areas of Earth, download speed is probably not a concern here. And you can realistically pick any of these options. Usually though, this top option, zero-cloud, is sufficient for most cases. So we'll just click that. Now, once you've chosen kind of a suitable server, you then need to select your operating system and choose the appropriate installation file. So if you're using Windows, you're obviously going to select this Windows option, and then you're going to select base, or if you prefer, you can just select install R for the first time. Now, if you're using a Mac, things are a little more complex. So if we click the Mac option here, you can see there's kind of a plethora of things here. The only two options that you really need to worry about are these first two. So at the time, so basically, if you're using a Macintosh operating system, you're going to need to select the option that is relevant to your computer. And at the time of making this video, Macintosh computers have recently begun being manufactured using their own in-house built processors called Apple Silicon. But the thing is, there's still a lot of older Macintosh computers out there that are using Intel-made processors. And the install file that you select here will need to be determined by which type of processor your computer is using. So if you're using a brand new Mac, you've almost certainly got Apple Silicon in it, and you're going to want to select this this top option. If you're using a much older Mac, you're going to want to select this this second option here. And if you're completely unsure, like maybe your Macintosh is kind of old, but also not terribly old, and you just don't know what's inside of it, then what you can do is you can actually determine what type of hardware your computer is actually using by actually have an option just by clicking the little Apple logo in the top left corner of your computer and selecting About This Mac. Basically what that will do is that'll cause a little screen to pop up that will probably look something like this. And if you see a row on this screen called chip, basically that means your machine is using Apple Silicon, and it'll say something, you know, akin to Apple M1 or Apple M2 or something like that. So if you see something like this, you're going to want to select this top option. However, if you see something like this where it says processor and, you know, it says like quad core, this or that, then you're going to want to select the other option because you have an Intel based processor in your computer. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're using a Mac. But let's head back because I'm using Windows, so I have to select the Windows option. I'm just going to pick base here, and then I'm just going to select download R version 4.2.2 for Windows, and that will download to my downloads folder here. So once you've downloaded the file, you can head over to wherever it is stored. So we'll maybe minimize this so you can see there it is right there. We'll double click that. And basically what should happen when you open this file is you should be prompted with an installation wizard that just walks you through the installation process. And, you know, unless you're absolutely certain that you know what you're doing, which means you're probably not watching this video, you should just accept all of the default settings. So let's do that. We don't need a desktop shortcut. Well, actually, we'll create one anyway. So the install process should be fairly quick. Shouldn't take too long. Okay, it is now finished. So you can see there we have a nice little icon that will take us to the R environment. So if I click this, you can see here is the R environment that we can use to basically give commands to our computer. But as I say, a lot of people prefer not to use this environment, and they prefer to install something called RStudio, which is what we're going to do. So I'm going to close this actually. Don't need to bother saving that. And what we're going to do is we're going to head over to the website posit.co. And I've actually already got that website open here. So it's posit.co. And in the upper right corner here, you should see an option to download RStudio. Now, I'll maybe just point out at this point, downloading RStudio is not strictly necessary to work through this channel's content. However, the wealth and the huge amount of features and customization that RStudio offers does make it a worthwhile program to install. And if you're using R, I would highly recommend installing RStudio, even though it's not strictly necessary. So let's download this. And you can see we have RStudio for desktop. So we'll click that. And we've actually already installed R, so we don't need to do that. So we can just jump to this second step here, install RStudio. And that will download. Okay, didn't take too long. Then we'll head over to our downloads folder here. And you can see there is the install file for RStudio. And again, you'll just get an installation wizard. And all you need to do is follow all of the prompts, basically, or just accept all the default settings. There, it's done. And you can see it didn't actually put a icon on our desktop, but it is in, there it is, RStudio. So if you're prompted with this, basically what you're going to want to do is click that little option, choose a specific version of R, and you can see we only have one version of R to choose from here. So we're just going to click that. And voila, this is RStudio. And you can decide what you want to do here. I'm just going to say no. But yeah, this is RStudio. And the nice part about RStudio is it has lots of customization. So if you go to Tools, Global Options, Appearance, you can change this to all kinds of interesting kind of themes. So I like the vibrant ink theme here. So I'm just going to change that real quick here. And you can also change the window panes and stuff like that. So for instance, actually, if we go back to global options here, console, no, pane layout, here it is. So I usually like to put the console over here. And I usually prefer to just stick everything in this lower corner. Hit apply, hit OK, and then we'll just do that. Okay. But you can customize RStudio to kind of, whatever suits your own personal needs. The font is a little small on my screen here, so I'm going to actually increase that size as well. We'll make it like 16. Is that too big? That might be too big. That's a bit big. Let's try 14. That's a bit better. Yeah. Okay. But as I say, you can customize RStudio to kind of your own visual tastes. Now, before we end here, I should maybe just say something about upgrading R. So there are updates made to R about 2 to 3 times a year, and generally it is a good practice to upgrade it and to also upgrade RStudio pretty regularly. And there are various methods you can use to do this, but the most straightforward method is to just do a basic reinstall of the program and kind of the commonly used packages. And packages are something we'll talk about in a later video. But what you can see here is at the time of this video, the um, the current version of R that we're using is version 4.2.2, which has been dubbed innocent and trusting. So in case you're wondering, each new release of R is actually given a nickname. So in this case, the nickname is innocent and trusting. And these nicknames are all kind of obscure references to Peanuts cartoons, like the comic strips that you see in newspapers, like Charlie Brown and Snoopy. I don't know why uh, they're references to the comic strip, but they are, and it's been like that since R's inception, and I don't imagine it'll change anytime soon. So that's the reason for this strange name. Anyway, I think this video is droned on long enough, and we will end.